Today was day 7 in Karen Reed's retrial. There was only one witness on the stand today, but it was a very important witness. It was a witness by the name of Jennifer McCabe. Jennifer McCabe started her testimony yesterday in day 6, continued for the entire day today on day 7, and is going to continue again on Friday. There's going to be no trial on Thursday tomorrow. That's going to be the day off. Maybe Judge Cannone has some other matters that she has to deal with in her courtroom. So there's going to be no trial on Thursday for Karen Reed. So Jennifer McCabe's testimony is going to pick up on Friday. Alan Jackson estimates he's got about another hour and a half left of cross-examination. Then there's going to be some redirect by Hank Brennan, and then maybe we'll get to some more witnesses on Friday. So definitely join us back here for the live stream of the trial on Friday morning starting at 9 a.m. So let's recap everything that happened today during Jennifer McCabe's testimony. But before we do, I do want to make some quick mentions of things that I'm noticing throughout the trial, and that is that, as you already know, that Judge Cannone does like to inject herself a little bit more into this trial than we maybe find by other judges. A lot of times judges will just sit back, make rulings on objections, overruled, sustained, make rulings on motions, have some sidebars, but they won't really take over the questioning of witnesses where there's an objection that's made. So we do find that already, where Judge Cannone is kind of injecting herself a little bit more than maybe other lawyers will appreciate. So that's just number one. But number two is another part, which I've spoken about before, but it's something that we're going to continually see throughout this trial. And that is that during cross-examination, you are allowed to ask certain questions and you're allowed to get certain answers to your questions, meaning the witness does not get to decide what type of answer to give to your question. If the question calls for a certain type of answer, then the answer should be yes, no, or I can't answer the question the way that you asked it. That's fine. But you can't just decide how you want to answer any single question that you are being asked. And we do find that Judge Cannone does allow the witnesses to kind of explain and answer other types of questions how the witness wants, which already I think is not really the right way to go about this. I think during cross-examination, the whole point of it is that I get to ask certain questions and you have to give me answers to my questions. And if on redirect, the other lawyer wants to ask for explanations, that's fine. But during my questioning, you have to answer the questions that I ask. So that's just one thing that we've mentioned in the past. But again, we saw that play out a little bit more today, where Alan Jackson asked a specific type of question. And I guess it may have been a little bit argumentative, but he didn't feel that he got an answer to that question. And Judge Cannone said, well, you did. It was just an argumentative type of answer back. And that's just not how kind of it works, right? I get to ask questions. You have to answer the questions. That's how it works. We're not on equal footing here. I'm the lawyer. You're the witness. So yes, maybe if my question is a little argumentative, that's because it's cross-examination. If it's a question, it's a question. So if there's an objection to be made, then fine. Maybe there's an objection, and then you can rule on the objection. But if I'm asking for a certain answer to my question and the witness is not giving it or not giving a satisfactory answer, then the answer shouldn't just be, well, she's giving the answer because your tone is the same as her tone. That's neither here nor there. So that's just something that I noticed. And also on top of that, there was something that really stuck out to me today. And that was when there was a certain point where Judge Cannone actually instructed the jury to be mindful of a jury instruction, which provides that the jury should remember that the questions and comments of counsel are not evidence, which to me is just odd. That doesn't really happen in every single trial. Usually you don't have in the middle of an attorney asking a question, the judge reminding the jury that the lawyer's questions are not evidence or the lawyer's comments are not evidence. And it's something that I would really be bothered by if I was trying this case. And maybe I'd even make a record about it and not in front of the jury and say, Your Honor, I just don't think that that's proper. I think that you may be turning the jury against me. You may be influencing the jury and prejudicing the jury against me. You're not doing it to Mr. Brennan. Now, again, Mr. Brennan's not really conducting cross-examination, so it's a lot easier because in direct, you're much more limited. But still, it's just something that you don't see every day, and it's something that really stuck out to me. Telling the jury in the middle of questioning that they should disregard or remember or be mindful that only answers are evidence. So it's just something that stuck out. All right, let's move on to the direct examination. We'll finish off the direct examination, and then we'll get into the cross-examination of Jennifer McCabe. So remember that we left off where Jennifer McCabe made the 911 phone call when they discovered John O'Keefe's body. So she calls 911. They play that clip for the jury. It's not really so clear. I couldn't hear clearly everything that was going on in that phone call, but you did hear her saying that there's a guy in the snow. And Hank Brennan knows that this is going to be an issue, or could be an issue, about how Jennifer McCabe is referring to like a really good friend, John O'Keefe, as just a guy in the snow. So He got out in front of that, which is what you're supposed to do when you have a part of your case which you don't love. You have to bring it up in front of the jury first, and that's what he did. So he said, "Why did you call him a guy?" And she said, essentially, because I'm not giving him a eulogy now. I'm just wanting to get as quick as I can all the specifics and the details to the 911 dispatcher so we can get moving on this. So I just said a guy, a man. That's really all I meant. Okay. So she also, what you could notice is that perhaps you can notice that there is a certain level of calmness when she is on the phone with 911. She's not at least crazy like Karen Reed is, not hysterical like Karen Reed is, just screaming all over the place. She's much more calm on the phone call. So she also testified that she knew that John O'Keefe was a little bit older than her, so that's how they had a little bit of joke about it. So that's how she knew that information as well. When she hung up the phone with 911, she called Nicole Albert. After all, it would make sense to call your sister if this person, John O'Keefe, was invited to her house and ended up dead in front of her house or dying. So she calls Nicole, no answer, and then she tries to take over Carrie Roberts, doing chest compressions, doing CPR. Karen was hysterical, still hysterical, screaming, running around. Is he dead? Could I have hit him? Did I hit him? Etc. So she speaks to the police officer, Officer Sarif, and then she also speaks, we're talking about Jennifer McCabe. She talks to Sergeant Link and Sergeant Good. She also spoke to some other police officers, but she doesn't remember specifically the names of the other officers that she spoke to. At that point, Carrie Roberts was making phone calls to John's family to let them know what's going on. And then she was asked, Jennifer McCabe was asked, do you know Sergeant Good? Do you know Sergeant Link? And she said, well, Sergeant Link, I know Sergeant Good from around. I know Sergeant Link. They were friendly. Their children only became friends more recently. So yes, I knew who he was. We were friendly, but not like close friends. At that point, she was trying to comfort Karen Reed, and an officer thought that it would be best if Karen Reed would sit in the back of the cruiser. After all, she's running around the scene. She's screaming, did I hit him? Is he dead? Not really very helpful when you have someone screaming and running around the scene. So the officer thought it would be a good idea if she sits in the back of a cruiser car and sits there with Jennifer McCabe. So that's what they did. Jennifer McCabe and Karen Reed went to the back of a cruiser car, and then Carrie Roberts came over and stood by the door. They all held hands and they prayed together. And that's when Karen was asking, did I get my period? And also, who's going to take care of these kids? And she's still beyond herself. She's still hysterical. But at least at that point, she's sitting in the back of a cruiser car. Then at some point, Karen Reed tells Carrie, go check on John. They're bringing him from taking him to the ambulance. Go check on John. So Carrie left. And this is a very important part of the case, because this is where Jennifer McCabe says at that point, when it's just them two in the back of the police car, that is when Karen Reed asks Jennifer McCabe to Google how long to die in the cold, or something about hypothermia. So because Jennifer McCabe has MS as well, so in the cold, she loses senses and her feelings, and it's hard for her to type accurately, which is why the search came out as how long to die in cold. And she may have tried a number of times to search it, but she didn't even see or wait to see if it actually was loaded or not, because Karen Reed was already on to the next thing. She was already gone and on to the next thing. That's exactly how hysterical she was. So then they were going back to Carrie Roberts' car, and that is when Karen Reed was talking to a first responder who was a woman, an EMT. We're going to be hearing about her most likely later, where she tells this other woman, and I'm wondering, maybe this is going to be the witness after Jennifer McCabe, who knows, but she tells this EMT, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. It was an affirmative statement that I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. And that is what Jennifer McCabe overheard Karen Reed telling this EMT. And at the point that she was startled at the point when she heard that. She's saying, Karen, what are you saying? I thought she was just crazy and acting like her crazy self right now and just coming up with crazy ideas, which, by the way, could be a reasonable argument for the defense why Karen Reed would say it as an affirmative statement. But this is what she initially thought. And okay, that's what she overheard. Then Officer Link, or Sergeant Link, asked her, Jennifer McCabe, to go and wake up Brian and Nicole Albert. So she walks up to the house. She opens the door because, after all, it was unlocked. And that was apparently common, which we're going to be hearing about. This is what we heard about in the first trial. We're probably going to be hearing about it again in the second trial, that it was common for the Brian and Nicole Albert to leave their door unlocked. Okay, so for whatever reason, that's how they operate. So she walked into the house. She walked up the stairs. She thinks that she knocked on their bedroom door first. I mean, I hope she did. And then opened it, walked over to Brian and Nicole Albert, and woke them up, saying, Brian, Nicole, they have to wake up. They wake up. And they both, excuse me, let me just take a quick drink. They both appear startled. And eventually they come downstairs. And at that point, Officer Link was already in the house. Sergeant Link was already in the house. And then eventually Matt McCabe came. And then Sergeant Link was talking to Brian and Nicole Albert. Then he spoke to Matt McCabe. And then later she's talking to Carrie Roberts about what should they be doing. So Carrie Roberts said we should go pick up John O'Keefe's parents in Braintree. So Officer Link said, no, you both can't leave. One of you have to stay so you can talk to the state troopers when they come. So Jennifer McCabe decided that she was going to be the one to stay at 34 Fairview. So now she's staying there at 34 Fairview, and you've got her, Jennifer McCabe, you got her husband, Matt McCabe, you got Nicole and Brian Albert there, and then also Julie Albert came because she had to drop something off. We're going to hear later that what Julie was actually dropping off was a bunch of donuts and a coffee, because that was her ritual when it was Brian Albert Jr.'s birthday. That's what she would drop off, apparently. So we're going to hear about that most likely later, but Jennifer McCabe didn't want to go there just quite yet. So she says that Julie came to drop something off, and Brian Albert said that Julie should really join them inside the house. Eventually, Chris Albert joins them, as well as Brian Higgins. So you got all these people in the house: Brian Higgins, Chris Albert, Julie Albert, Nicole Albert, Brian Albert, and Matt and Jennifer McCabe, all in the house talking together about the night before. And that's when things started to come back to her. And Officer Link, Sergeant Link, already left. And then that's when she remembered that she forgot to tell Sergeant Link that Karen Reed told this EMT, this woman, that I hit him. So therefore, they called Officer Link back. Someone suggested at one point, maybe it was Brian Higgins, but someone suggested that she call Officer Link back, or Sergeant Link back. And he does come back. And that's when she tells him that she overheard Karen Reed telling this EMT, I hit him. Then eventually Michael Proctor calls Jennifer McCabe, and he wants to talk to Jennifer McCabe. So Jennifer McCabe tells him, well, look, I really want to get home already. Let me go home. So let's just meet at my home. So that's what they did. Michael Proctor came to Jennifer McCabe's home around 11:30. She spoke to Proctor and Buchanan in her home, and Matt was there. And there was also another person there, a person by the name of Brian Albert. Now, Jennifer McCabe said that she really wanted Brian Albert to come be with her while she was being questioned. So that's who was in her house when she was being questioned by Michael Proctor and Yuri Buchanan. So she told the troopers everything, including the fact that she overheard Karen Reed saying, I hit him. Now we're going to see later in cross-examination that some of those statements actually did not make it to Michael Proctor's report. But she is adamant that she did tell Michael Proctor that she overheard Karen Reed saying, I hit him, as an affirmative statement. Now, she did not say anything about the broken taillight, so she forgot about that. So a few hours later, she spoke to Michael Proctor, and then that's when she remembered to tell him about the broken taillight that she saw, that Karen Reed showed her, and that she told her about in one of their first few phone calls. Then eventually, Carrie Roberts called her back and told her that John O'Keefe has officially passed. The next day on Sunday, she went over to the Meadows family, went over to Meadows where the John O'Keefe's family was sitting, and they went there or staying at that point. And she went over there with Carrie Roberts, and Carrie Roberts' daughter was in the car, and Jennifer McCabe's daughter was in the car. They all went together to Meadows, John O'Keefe's house. And she said that the house was filled with people coming over. They're offering condolences. I mean, everyone was there. Even the car repairman was there. That was the one example of a person that she gave, which was interesting. Okay, so the house was filled with people coming over to offer condolences, but there's one person who didn't show up, a person by the name of Karen Reed. Karen Reed did not feel that she should come over. So that's what Jennifer McCabe's testimony was. Then eventually she left Meadows with Carrie Roberts and her daughter, heading home, but they ended up dropping off her daughter, I think it's Carrie Roberts' daughter, at Sergeant Lank's house. So they made a stop at Sergeant Lank's house. And at that point, Mrs. Lank came out of the house because she's good friends with Carrie Roberts. She jumped into the back seat because it was so cold after all. And they were all hanging out. And then eventually at some point, Jennifer McCabe felt that she needed to use the restroom. So she went inside the Lank's house just to use the bathroom and came back out. Then at some point, Peggy O'Keefe asked Carrie Roberts to do a timeline. So Carrie Roberts got together with Jennifer McCabe and they did this timeline. They made this timeline together. And her sister Nicole, I think Nicole, she didn't say it was her sister Nicole, but I'm assuming it's her sister Nicole, was also there writing this timeline down. And eventually she did a lot of interviews with police. They asked for her phone. She gave her phone, no problem. They let her do the extraction. She signed it away, no problem, showing that she has nothing to hide. And she wanted to help in any way that she could. So that was the extent of the direct examination of Jennifer McCabe. Then we got on to cross-examination of Alan Jackson. So the first thing that you can notice, and this is the first thing that you have to notice when you're watching this, if you watched the first trial and you're watching the second trial, you can absolutely see that Jennifer McCabe is much more in control this time. She's much more careful. She's much more sweet. She's trying to come off as someone who is doesn't have a dog in the fight, someone who's not argumentative, not someone who's not combative, just someone who's saying, I'm sorry if there's any confusion, and thank you, and smiling more. She's much more calm this time around than she was the first time around. So she's definitely putting an effort into making it look like she has no dog in the fight, and she's just trying to help her friend, John O'Keefe. So you can definitely see that in her demeanor this time around. So during cross-examination, the first thing that Alan Jackson wanted to bring out is, when was the last time he spoke to Carrie Roberts? Because remember, he's trying to paint this whole idea that she's always in contact with Carrie Roberts, and they're kind of coordinating their stories together. And she said that they did speak to Carrie Roberts a lot about the situation in this case. That's what they talk a lot about. I mean, obviously they become friends and they talk about other things also, but they do talk about this case a lot because everything that they've endured from this case. So she did say about that. And at some point, she kind of slipped and said something about her story, that this is my story. But then she quickly tried to change that and say, no, I mean, I'm not saying a story. This is just the truth that I'm telling you. But we're not trying to coordinate our stories or our memories or anything like that. We are just telling you or the truth, or at least I'm just telling you the truth of what happened. So she did say that she met 4 or 5 times with the DA's office. Apparently there was some sort of Zoom meeting the night before. And apparently that, I don't know what happened there, but that was not supposed to be spoken about today, but she did mention it. But she did meet, she said she met at the DA's office with Brennan. She met with Tully and Buchanan and the witness advocate. And she did watch some of her previous direct and cross-examination, but nothing too specific. She didn't watch the entirety of her first testimony from her first trial. And something that Alan Jackson also kind of brought out was like, was there any discussion? Was Hank Brennan ever telling you that you should answer questions a certain way, or about your demeanor, that maybe you should be more soft this time? Which again is something that you can tell right away that she was being much more soft this time. But she was saying, no, of course he didn't say anything like that. She didn't practice her testimony at all. She didn't run through a mock cross-examination of her testimony. And this is at least what she told Alan Jackson. Now, she did say that she's very close with her family. Obviously, people are very close with their family. So she's very close with Brian and Nicole Albert. And what Alan Jackson did establish is that Karen Reed, although you did say that you liked her, right? You both have MS and you kind of clicked from the beginning, but she is not family, right? She's the only one in this picture, her and John O'Keefe, that is not family with you. So that was true. Okay. Then he brought out the fact that Michael Proctor's sister, is best friends with a woman named Jillian Daniels. Jillian Daniels' sister is Julie Albert, who's married to Chris Albert. So you're seeing the connection there that Chris Albert and Brian Albert are brothers. Chris Albert is married to Julie Albert, whose sister's with Jillian Daniels, who's best friends with Michael Proctor's sister. So he is trying to show that there is a connection between Michael Proctor and the Albert family. Also, he was showing how Kevin Albert is on the Canton Police Department, and also Chris Albert is a selectman. So he is trying to show how this family is connected. They're powerful. They're throughout the entire community. Then he brought out the next point. So he brought out a few good, solid points that he brought out on cross-examination, and this was the first part. So the first part was the following: that he said that there was an agency who was not affiliated with the Canton Police Department and not affiliated with the Massachusetts State Police, which we all know is the federal government. But you're not allowed to say those words in the trial. But I think if you're on the jury, you should kind of figure it out by now. So this agency, this law enforcement agency, contacted her in April 2023 and informed her that it is a crime to lie to them, even in an interview. So they're letting her know that it's not just perjury when you're on the stand, that if you're going to lie to us, meaning the federal government, it's a crime even to lie to us in the interview. And when they first approached her, they actually didn't call her. They first approached her kind of on the street, and they asked her if she's Jennifer McCabe, and she said, no, I'm Nicole. And that was just kind of because she was like, hey, who are these two people coming over to me? So she kind of just lied her way out of that one. But then eventually she got a phone call from them like very soon after. And then they said, look, we're with the federal government. This obviously didn't come out during cross-examination, but they weren't allowed to mention federal government, but I'm just going to mention it because that's who it was. So she got a phone call from them and saying that they want to speak to her. And she said, give me 10 minutes. Just give me 10 minutes. I'm running around in the morning. I just need 10 minutes to get ready. Well, what happened? They came after 10 minutes. And then after a little while, she decided to end the interview. Okay. So Jennifer McCabe decided to suspend the interview. Now she was asked, what did she do during those 10 minutes? Now remember, you are not allowed to lie to the federal government, even in an interview. So she was asked, what did you do during those 10 minutes when you said you need 10 minutes to get ready? And her response was that she called Matt McCabe, her husband, who came home, and she also called Carrie Roberts. So first Alan Jackson said, well, why would you call Carrie Roberts? Why would you call Carrie Roberts? To get your story straight? Why are you calling her if you're just going to say the truth? What do you have to call Carrie Roberts for? So he spoke a little bit about that. He asked her some questions about that. And then she said, no, I was just curious about whether they spoke to her. We're always in contact about this case. So, I was just calling to find out about that. But then she said that she had to call the agents back because she forgot that she actually spoke to some other people too. Now, this is where it gets very interesting because maybe you forgot to talk about one person. Maybe you call 3 people and then you just under the moment you said, oh, I only spoke to 2 people. But here she actually called 3 other people besides Matt and Carrie Roberts. Okay, so she called them back, called these agents back, these federal agents back, and said, I forgot to tell you that I called also Peggy O'Keefe and the witness advocate at the DA's office and someone known by the name of Brian Albert. That's who I wanted to call during those 10 minutes. So Alan Jackson pointed out that, that doesn't look too good for you, right? It looks like you're lying, which would be a crime, which the federal government warned you about. Okay. So, but she did call them back and say, okay, well, I forgot to tell you about these other 3 people. All right. So then we moved on to January 28th, 2022 at the Waterfall. Excuse me. She said that there was no tension between John O'Keefe and Karen Reed. They looked like a normal couple. They're in good spirits. This is what everyone's going to testify to. Anyway, no one appeared drunk. Everyone looked like they were fine. Now, she also said that Brian Higgins and Brian Albert were play fighting. Right? This is something that they brought out, that Alan Jackson brought out, that Brian Albert and Brian Higgins, we're going to see the video of it probably soon, that they were play fighting. And then she said, I think something for the first time that I ever heard was that Karen Reed was actually also play fighting with Matt McCabe at some point. Okay, that's just what her testimony was this time. That's what she remembers. And then eventually, after the Waterfall was over, she said to Karen Reed, why don't you come with me? Because she thought that John was going to stay there with Matt. So therefore, she was saying, why don't you just come with me? Then she said that she walked in, finally, okay, so obviously Karen Reed did not take her up on her offer. And she walked into the front door at 34 Fairview. And she did notice Brian Higgins' Jeep, which was parked in front of the house by the mailbox. And she doesn't remember if it had a plow on it. So that Jeep was outside, then it's going to have to stay there the entire night. I mean, that's just the way that this works, because if Brian Higgins was in that house the entire night until he left, well, then when she got there at whatever it was, 12:15, 12:25, whenever she was there, and Brian Higgins' Jeep was there, and then he didn't leave till 1:30, well, then his Jeep had to have been there the entire night. Okay, so that's what Alan Jackson was establishing right there. And then at some point, someone told her that there was a vehicle outside, meaning Karen Reed's vehicle. And she looked out straight at the front door, and she saw right in front of the Jeep, or right in front of where the Jeep should have been, Karen Reed's vehicle. Now, this is where the testimony was a little confusing, because at some point she said that it was in front of the Jeep, and then at some point she said, well, she doesn't remember seeing the Jeep, but she did remember seeing lights, which is part of Ryan Nagel's car, because Ryan Nagel was going to pick up Julie Nagel, who was at this party with Brian Albert Jr. celebrating his birthday at 34 Fairview. So I think eventually it came to where she doesn't remember seeing the Jeep again behind Karen Reed's Lexus, but she does remember seeing Karen Reed's Lexus, and then in peripheral, she did see some lights coming from Ryan Nagel's car. So that was in terms of her story with that. Now he also brought out the fact that he was with Carrie Roberts. For some reason, at that point, he wanted to point out that she was with Carrie Roberts in the anteroom before the grand jury proceeding. Again, trying to show that before Carrie Roberts talks, gives testimony, before Jennifer McCabe gives testimony, they all talk to each other. Okay. Now here's where it gets also one of the biggest questions of the case. I think this is one of the biggest questions that we really have to get a good answer to, and I don't think we have a good answer to. I remember in the first trial being really perplexed about this part also. There is this dog called Chloe. Okay, so Chloe is owned by Brian and Nicole Albert, and we're going to hear testimony later that Chloe sleeps in the same bedroom as Brian and Nicole Albert. Now, there's all this action outside. There's a screaming woman outside. Karen Reed is screaming and beyond hysterical. Everyone's going to testify to that. Right in front of 34 Fairview, right in front of Brian and Nicole Albert's bedroom. There's cars. There's police cars. There's sirens. I don't think their sound was on, but the lights. There's lights. And running engines. Carrie Roberts is screaming back at Karen Reed to shut the F up. So everyone's screaming at each other. There's a lot of chaos in front of their house. You would think that this may have an effect on a dog. You would think, right? You would think that a dog may not sleep through this so well. And then the next part, the dog is definitely not going to sleep through. So that morning, right, Jennifer McCabe walks into the house at around 6:40 a.m. So between 6:10 and 6:40 a.m., there was this relative chaos. Now, Jennifer McCabe did try to say, well, it was off to the side, but that's really not going to be helpful. I mean, it's a little bit to the side. It was still within view of the bedroom window. All those lights and everything, and a dog would pick up on this stuff. Okay, but anyway, she did try to say that. So she walks in to the bedroom, and she unexpectedly walked in to a dark house, walks up the stairs, and in the last trial, and I don't know why Alan Jackson didn't bring out this point more, but in the last trial, she said that she burst into the bedroom. She literally burst into the bedroom. In this trial, she didn't say it. She didn't explain it like that. Jennifer McCabe kind of explained that it was much more calm this time around, that she didn't burst into their bedroom. But she doesn't recall seeing a dog at all. She doesn't recall seeing Chloe. She doesn't remember any reactions by Chloe. No dog barking anywhere. Doesn't recall Chloe at all. And that is one of the big mysteries of this case. Where is Chloe? Why is Chloe not reacting to all of this that's going on? And especially when someone's going into their house, climbing up the stairs, and then bursting into a bedroom. And then whatever happened, either Jennifer McCabe doesn't remember it or it just didn't happen. So it's just one of the, I think, the big questions about this case. Okay. Now, he also brought out the fact that this is a dog that's not good with strangers, right? And she said, no, this dog is just not good with other dogs. I was never able to bring my dog, but I never heard that this dog is not good with other people, even though we're going to maybe hear about later that this dog did attack another person. But that maybe that person was holding another dog. We'll see more about that later. Okay. So she also testified that the last person to leave 34 Fairview was Caitlin Albert. And okay, so then they go back and forth about this Ryan Nagel's car and Brian Higgins' Jeep again. So they go back to all that information. Now, what was interesting is that they started talking about how many times Jennifer McCabe went to check on Karen Reed, meaning check on the Lexus outside. In the first trial, it seemed that her testimony was that she checked on them 5 times, 5 different times. But in this trial, her testimony kind of changed. And she said that she only remembers going there maybe 3 times or 4 times. And not all 5 times, or 4 times in this case, did she actually see the car. So she went there 3. This is very important, okay? She went there 3 times. This is what her testimony was. She went there 3 times. The first time was at 12:27. Okay. 12:27 a.m. is when she first texts John O'Keefe here. He has a question mark because she saw his car. So she said she saw his car, saw Karen Reed's Lexus, and then she texted him here. So that was the first time that she saw him. The next time that she saw him was 12:31 and 47 seconds. This is important times. This is the reason why I'm saying it. 12:31 and 47 seconds is when the next text was sent to John O'Keefe, which was pull behind me, which means that she said, I saw the car again, the second time. And this time already moved up to the flagpole. So the first time she saw it was straight out of the front door, closer to the mailbox. The next time she saw it was by the flagpole, which is a few minutes later, from 12:27 to 12:31 and 47 seconds. And that's when she texted pull behind me. Now, there was a third time that she went out to see the car. This is how her testimony kind of changed this time. The third time she went out to look at the car. Now, the third time, she didn't say specifically that she texted anything the third time. There were additional texts at 12:40, 12:42, at 12:45. But there was a third time when she went and saw the car, which was beyond the flagpole. Okay, so let's keep this in mind. The first time she saw the car was directly out of the front door, close to the front, to the mailbox. That was 12:27. One text here. Next time she sees the car, 12:31 and 47 seconds. That's when it's by the flagpole. And she texts, pull behind me. The third time, she doesn't text anything, but she sees the car beyond the flagpole, in front of the flagpole. Now, here's the question that I want to ask you. The question is, when was that third time that she saw that car move a little bit closer or further ahead of the flagpole? Because here's the problem. 12:31 and 47 seconds is when she saw it for the second time. John O'Keefe's phone registered taking steps at 12:31 and 56 seconds. Okay, that's 9 seconds later when John O'Keefe's phone was registering steps, which would seem to me that it had to be that within those 9 seconds, she looked again outside the window and didn't see anything. That's the only thing in my mind that makes any sense, which again is a very, very tight window. She sees 12:31, 47 seconds, sends that text, assuming turns around and goes back to doing what she's doing, then checks again, doesn't see anything, doesn't see John O'Keefe, does see the car in front of the flagpole. And then John's phone starts recording steps at 12:31 and 56 seconds. So, I mean, this is really, really a short amount of time where she had to have checked the third time and seen the car there, but not seen John O'Keefe. Okay. Anyway, so that was the question about that testimony. So she also testified that she never heard any screaming, never heard any foul language, never heard any door slamming, never heard any fight, any revving of engines or tires screeching. She didn't see anything like that. And also something that he pointed out, which is very brilliant of Alan Jackson, was to show that at some point she testified that she saw tire tracks in the street. Now he said that you weren't looking for tire tracks, right? He said no, but you were looking for something else, and you happened to notice the tire tracks, right? That's peripheral vision. So the next time when you looked outside and you didn't see the car there, which would mean that John O'Keefe's body was lying on the front lawn and there's nothing obstructing her vision, but you didn't see John O'Keefe's body. So that's a point that he kept coming back to, saying, oh, look, remember those tire tracks you saw and you weren't looking for it. But the next time when you looked out the window and you didn't see, or the front door, and you didn't see the car, which means that John O'Keefe's body must have been there, and you didn't see a body, a 6'2", 216-pound man. So that was another good point that he brought out in cross-examination. Okay. Then he goes about talking about how she eventually left the house, and she she gets into the car, and then she's in the front passenger seat, and she doesn't see any sort of she doesn't see any man in front, lying in the front yard, doesn't see John O'Keefe. And even though she was driving right next to the area where John O'Keefe was lying at that point, and because she claims that she was turned to the middle and to the back talking to Julie Nagel and Sarah Levinson. And she definitely did not hear Julie Nagel or Sarah Levinson say anything about a dark figure. We're going to hear more about that later, where one of them, I think it's Julie Nagel, I'm not exactly sure, but one of them is going to testify that something about saying in the car, oh, what was that? Or there was some sort of dark figure there. Jennifer McCabe said, no, none of that actually happened. Okay. And then eventually we got into the next part where she's the next morning, where at one point, again, he tried to bring out that during this testimony, she said that she was not able to determine that this was actually John O'Keefe in the morning. Now we're talking about in the morning when she was with Karen Reed and Carrie Roberts, and they discovered John O'Keefe. So in this time, she said that she was not able to determine that it was John O'Keefe until she was really, really close. And already in the last trial, she said that as soon as she was coming out of the passenger side of the vehicle, she was able to see that that was John O'Keefe. So that was something else that he brought out on cross-examination. And then also, he really set this up very well. He set this next part up very well, where he said that you claim that you heard Karen Reed say, I hit him to this paramedic, right? You remember her saying to this EMT, this woman EMT, right? It's a very memorable statement, right? It's something that you never forget. You would never forget this. You would never even overlook it. And he set this up just brilliantly because he said, he just set it up. You would never forget it. You would never overlook it. Yet you did when it came to the grand jury testimony. Because in the grand jury in April 26, 2022, when you testified, you never said that Karen Reed said affirmatively, I hit him. And he went through a number of different times when she was asked about Karen Reed's statements in the grand jury and she did not say that Karen Reed said, I hit him. So, that's a very strong point of Alan Jackson's cross-examination. Also, in Michael Proctor's report, it doesn't say that you said that you heard Karen Reed say, I hit him. Also, Sergeant Michael Link, when he came back to the scene, it just says in his report that you hope you didn't hit, Karen Reed said that she hoped she didn't hit him, but not that she actually said, I hit him. So that was that. And also she said that Sergeant Link also was not told anything about the broken taillight or the fight. So some good points that he brought on cross-examination, and we're going to be hearing more about that on Friday. So that's going to be it for today. That was the recap of Jennifer McCabe's testimony so far. A very interesting case, like always, although we are learning some new information this time around than we did the first time. So it's going to be a very different trial, even though some of the things are going to be the same. So that's going to be it for now. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, like, and we will see you next time.